Hello, good friends, my fellow music lovers and art lovers. Welcome back to the JB Classical uh, YouTube channel at last. It's been a while since I've been able to upload, unfortunately. If you've seen the previous video to this down in the list, and even the one before that, um, I have been trying to get my new but used computer to work and post videos before now. But unfortunately, I need to do a complete software overhaul, which I hadn't expected to have to do. So it's going to take a little bit longer. So today, because I've been bursting to make some more videos, I thought I'd do the only thing I can do at the moment and make a slightly different video, but classically music based, of course, because that's the point of the channel. Um, so it's a different format today. Today is going to be for those of you who enjoy classical music but aren't particularly uh, completely captured by it yet, but would perhaps like to be a bit more. We're going to be going over a bare bones classical music collection. What would you, in my humble opinion, which recordings from which composers would be good to collect, to buy, whether it's in the CDs that I show you in CD format, whether it's in, of course, any streaming format you prefer, Spotify, iTunes, you know, whichever you prefer, really. I personally have a mix. I have hundreds of CDs, but I also have, of course, my Spotify account and all of, other streaming services where almost everything I'm going to show you and recommend you can find um, uh, on the streaming platforms, of course, and many more recordings and versions of the pieces I'm going to suggest you should start to collect to create a sort of a bare bones, a skeleton classical music collection. So we're going to have, we're aiming to have a bit of an overview. So we're basically going to go from um, early opera, chronologically through the centuries, through the composers chronologically, up to early 20th century, more or less. So don't forget, this is just a bare bones skeleton collection suggestion. This will be in 3, maybe even 4 parts on the channel. So this is part 1, this is the first part. So we're going to start with my recommendations from the earliest parts of the classical music repertoire. Don't forget, classical music is a term which covers a vast amount of time, vast amount of styles. It's not particularly helpful, actually, but of course we have to sort of, I suppose, delineate, well, we don't have to, but, you know, for obvious reasons, delineate classical music, the 400 years of music that preceded, you know, jazz and blues and rock and roll and pop and everything else, and rap and everything. So yeah, classical music, not entirely helpful, but it covers what we're going to cover at the moment. So it's going to be a bit of a mix of genres within classical music. So it'll be operas, it will be symphonic music, it will be vocal music pieces, or it will be there's not much chamber work here, actually, to be honest, because I'd probably get into that more in depth once you've got your sort of bare your bare sort of collection of the major composer's major sort of works, which I'm going to show here. Then I'll probably get into more into chamber works. But there are, of course, because there are. I'm actually going to start, not the very first selection, but almost go straight into, I suppose, what are really chamber works, because they're solo keyboard pieces, you know. So anyway, that's enough blather from me. Let's start. So, my first recommendation for a new collector would be, as you can see here, there we are, would be Purcell's Dido and Aeneas. Now, if you haven't heard it, it's a very interesting experience, especially if you've not heard anything, you know, pre sort of the height of 19th century sort of classical music, you know, pre sort of Verdi, Puccini, you know, the sort of classic FM sort of normal sort of thing you'd hear in the morning when you're sort of doing your breakfast or going to work and things like that. So Dido and Aeneas, of course, this is a very, very well-respected, well-known recording. As you can see there, sung by the fantastic Dame Janet Baker. There we are. This is the again. You can get whichever company happens to be selling the CD or the stream, or, you know, on the streaming service. You don't have to get this is Decca Legends, isn't it? Decca Legends. There we are. There's a legendary performance and performers. Very, very well known, very well respected, this performance. And this is from, hang on, got my wrong glasses on. Let me switch glasses because I can't read. Oops, anything. Swap something over, as I always do. Right. Let's see. So this is from, I used to be able to know this off the top of my head. 1962. So it's a 1962 recording, and it's the English Chamber Orchestra with Anthony Lewis and Dame Janet Baker. As I say, this is on the 1961. This is the legends they are. So there we are. That's my first recommendation to start your collection off on. Really wonderful. And of course, now before I go further, what I've done is to cut down the time. Remember, this is a skeleton collection of the sort of most important pieces, which you then build on, in my own humble opinion, what you should have in it, and start off with. So I've tried to pick no more than two, preferably one, but no more than two recommended CDs for your collection thus far per composer. Some composers have had a lot of trouble with that. As you'll see with this now, our next composer, a must-have, I've cut it down to just two recordings, but it's one piece, two different recordings, because I think it's probably their most well-known, famous, and possibly most important piece, to be honest. And Bach, of course, Bach, and I'm going to show you, recommend Bach's Goldberg Variations, I think recorded 1955 by Glenn Gould, the great Glenn Gould. This is another legendary recording, very, very well respected, well known, you know, fantastic recording. Mono, but many of the great recordings are. So I hope mono's not a problem for you, but absolutely fantastic, full of energy, absolute legendary recording. And there we are. This is Sony. What are we? Sony Masterworks. So 1955, Glenn Gould, the Goldberg Variations, absolute must. An absolute must for anyone wanting to build a collection. And our second Bach recording is again Glenn Gould, and again Sony Masterworks. But this is Glenn Gould recording the Goldberg Variations again, as you can see, but this time towards the end of his career and towards the end of his life, sadly. and this is from 1980, I think. Let's see, I think it's 1980. 80 or 81, something like that. 81. 1981, so 1955, the previous recording, and this is 1981, and it's notably different. You can hear the difference. He's interpreted it very differently because he's an older man, you know. You know, think of the Rolling Stones when they were younger. They had a bit more energy than they do now when they're performing. You know, they're older, so not quite as dynamic, shall we say, overall as the 1955 recordings. Of course, this is in stereo, so if you enjoy stereo a bit more than mono, if you have a problem with mono, you might enjoy this a bit more. But a different, very different approach from going called there. So there we are. 2 Goldberg variations, 2 classic recordings. Of course, again, something with like the Goldbergs, you could almost spend a day or two listening to all of the great recordings on Spotify and choosing any number. You know, that's the case with many of these recommendations I'm going to show you. So we move on. We're jumping from great composer to great composer. So obviously, if you want to fill in at some point, you will. You know, so we've skipped over Haydn, we've skipped over Handel, you know, and we're going straight on to Mozart. There we go. That's my 4th recommendation for a basic collection. It is The Marriage of Figaro, of course, by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Perhaps his most popular, accessible opera, perhaps. This is another very famous recording, very well respected. This is I think this is 1955 as well. Yeah, the recording. It's the Glyndebourne Festival Chorus, and it's Vittorio Gui. I'm not Gui. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Never been quite sure how to pronounce that properly. Yeah, Sesto Bruscantini as Figaro, Graziella Scuti as Susanna. There we are. So you don't have to get it on the EMI, of course, but this is what I've got. This is my CD version of it. Again, you can find it on Spotify or wherever else you want to find it on a streaming service. There we are. Absolute classic. Another classic recording. There we are. So that's a must-have. Of course, Mozart, I'm sticking to operas because, you know, as with Bach, his keyboard works are sort of his bass, his defining works really, along with the I've gone blank. Why did I go blank when I did the videos? Along with the cantatas. Cantatas, that was the word. Cantatas. Thanks for staying with me there. So with Mozart, I've gone for operas and chosen one. Obviously, I could have chosen, you know, Magic Flute. I could have chosen lots of anything really. Could have gone for the symphonies, but I suppose the operas are defining work for Mozart. So let's move on to the big B, the other big B, Beethoven. There we are. Next recommendation, Symphony Number 3, and it's a very famous Otto Klemperer recording with the Philharmonia Orchestra. There we go. This one is, I think it's part of the Great Conductors series from Naxos. And again, you can find this with different labels, you know. There we are, Otto Klemperer, of course, and that's again 55, I think, 54 recording, mid-50s, mono. Sort of the standard, all of the standard sort of great recordings of the Eroica. There we are, so highly recommended. There we go. Naxos, very good label for really good historic recordings and not much money. Move on to Beethoven Symphonies 5 and 7. course, I've gone for Beethoven. I've gone for the symphonies as defining sort of works. Of course, again, I could go piano sonatas or chamber works. There we are. So that's 5/7. Carlos Kleiber, again another famous standard sort of classic performance of Beethoven, and Symphonies 5/7, particularly 7 on here. Particularly 7 is very, very well known and regarded, loved by many critics. There we are. So this is part of Deutsche Grammophon's Legends. I think it's Legends. Oh, original series. There we are. But again, I don't think this is the only label that this is available on. Okay, so I highly recommend that one. You'll really enjoy this. Beethoven's one I've had a bit of trouble just picking one or two, to be honest, as you'll see. So I'm going to give my final Beethoven, and I'm going to give you as my final Beethoven selection. There we go. Beethoven Missa Solemnis. Why the Missa Solemnis? Because first of all, it's hard to cut Beethoven down to just 2, and thirdly, this is such a great recording. Again, Otto Klemperer. I think again with the Philharmonia, New Philharmonia Chorus and Orchestra. There we go. And of course, Beethoven regarded the Missa Solemnis as his crowning achievement. So, Klemperer, Beethoven, possibly his best work as far as he was concerned. There we go. Great recordings of the century. We'll come back to this series later on because there's at least one more recommendation on this series from EMI Classics. So highly, again, I think this is mid-50s. Let's see. Tells me somewhere. Have a look. Somewhere. I think it's from the mid. Oh no, sorry, it's mid-60s. This one I think we've moved on to the 60s. Quite, yes, it says 1966, I think. So we move on to the 60s there, mid-60s. Fantastic, another fantastic recording. The Kyrie, of course, possibly the standout moment on the CD, on the recording. So let's move on to Schubert, the next great, of course, the successor to Beethoven in some ways and not in other ways, musically. There we are, Schubert. And of course, I've gone for the Winterreise as my sole piece of Schubert I want to recommend today. And of course, Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau's and Gerald Moore's famous recording of this absolute classic. There we go. Again, this is Deutsche Grammophon. There's Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. There we go. As Beethoven blares away in the background. There we go. Again, absolute must-have for anyone that wants a bare bones collection and Schubert in it. The famous Winterreise recording, again beloved by many. And we'll have one or two more. Oh, shall we stop here? I think we'll stop here and then carry on with it's not too long an episode. We'll carry on with part 2 in a bit in the next video. So here we go, move on to Chopin, and I've chosen the Polonaises, and of course Paganini. Again, so many artists and recordings you could choose. Rubinstein, of course, springs to mind, with the Polonaises, of course. But this is a very good, again, sort of accepted standard. Some prefer the sort of the Rubinstein recordings, but I love both, really. There we go. And again, I think this is from we've moved on here to the 70s there, in 1976. There we go. Again, that's on the the Deutsche Grammophon originals, the originals, yeah, I can remember. There we go. Highly recommended. There we go. Get all the Polonaises there from Mr. Pollini. So we'll stop it there. This is part one. So that's part one gone through. We've gone from Purcell to Chopin quite quickly in 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes. And now I'll now move on to part two. I have to split these up so I can sort of upload them onto YouTube without too much trouble. So see you in part two.